This is just side note, if anybody's curious, I'm using the module PictureTube by Substack, and like most Substack modules, it's not been updated in 3 years, but seems to work okay. You just feed it a ping image, and then it spits out the ANSI color codes for it. So yeah, my talk is called Blackmagic APIs. I am Josh McLean. That's my email, pretty small down there at the bottom, and my GitHub URL. It's just github.com/Patchett. I go by Patchett most places online. Yeah, so I work at this company. It's pretty fun. My talk today involves this gentleman here. You probably recognize him. This is Roy Fielding. He's a very smart guy. He's the author of REST. For those of you not in the know, REST is a set of API design constraints that kind of sits on top of HTTP, and it dictates the kind of relationships that we should aspire to hold our resources accountable for maintaining between each other. So if I had like URL/dogs, you can make reasonable expectations about the kind of resources that exist as descendants of a dog. Like maybe a dog has an owner, and that would be dogs/dog ID/owner conceivably. And it just makes it very almost empirical how to navigate between related resources, and that's cool. So obviously there's a lot more that goes into REST than just that. I'm going kind of at a high level today. So if you are not familiar with REST, or if you are only cursorily familiar with it and you want to use it for your own APIs, I highly recommend reading Roy Fielding's thesis. He's not much of a humorist, but it's still an interesting read. So a lot of people are using REST APIs. It's generally accepted in our profession that it's a good way to style an API and to flesh it out. But I have bad news, and a lot of you that are veteran conference attendees probably have heard this already, but I'll say it again. And that's that most, like 99% of people that have implemented a REST API haven't implemented a truly RESTful API. There's one particular implementation detail that Roy Fielding mentions, and it is called right? So there's that old programming adage that there's two hard things in programming, cache invalidation and so I mean, in his defense, Roy Fielding did get cache invalidation right. Anyway, yeah, HATOAS. It's so fun to say. Very, very strict acronymical representation going on here. He throws all the articles, all the prepositions in there. It could be hates. I mean, think about how much easier that would be. Like, we know it's an application, we could drop that. We could drop the of. I feel like that would read a lot better. So I feel like that's part of the reason why nobody really even knows what this is that the acronym is so god-awful. Anyway, so what is this? This is, like I said, it's a specific constraint within REST, and what it dictates is that the resources that you return should be linkable together via hypertext. And sometimes you see hypermedia. And so what does that mean? That's kind of a mouthful. Hypertext is the engine of application state. You don't want to have to say that at a party. So basically what that means is that the responses that your API returns, the body of your response or something, like earlier I said, if I have dogs/123, that should not only should that return information about that dog, like maybe it's got its fur color, maybe it's got its breed, stuff like that, it should also return links, like URLs to related resources. Like I said, maybe that dog's got an owner, dog/123/owner, and if we're just coming to this API without having the documentation manual sitting on our hotel coffee table next to us, we might not necessarily ever figure out that that dog has an owner that we can learn more about. So this basically just dictates, hey, have some representation of the related models within the resources that you pipe down so that people can, without having a document, like having the documentation for it, be able to navigate related resources. I think that's pretty cool. So I wrote a couple libraries. One's for humans, and basically, so there's this. I think there's an accepted, well, I'll just say it's like the prevailing opinion among people that write REST APIs that doing is not really worth it. I mean, you have to, obviously there's additional payload size for like fleshing out all these links, and maybe you have a lot of them. And then you have the computational overhead of adding these to every resource that you pipe down. And I mean, what are we gonna do? It's more work to write an API around resources that we don't have any concrete grasp over ahead of time than it is to just hard code these things into our code base. So most people are just like, you know what, just throw it under the bus. I hate that thing. And so that's kind of why we don't really have a lot of love for in our prevailing REST API frameworks and stuff. So I did write an API framework that kind of tries to adhere to this specific constraint, and it's called Sorcerer, kind of keeping with the Blackmagic theme. It's available at my GitHub if you want to look at it right now. You don't have to. You don't ever have to look at it. And then I also wrote something for robots, or for humans that write robots, like many of us have done. And that's the subserviently named Acolyte, and that lives also at my GitHub URL. And so what do I mean when I say that's for robots, or for humans writing robots? So like I was saying, most people that are writing REST APIs, they're not going to go to the work of being like, well, I'm going to implement this state machine and this like auto discovery bot in our company's production code base. So they just hard code those stuff. But I was like, you know, it would be actually pretty cool if I could just have a very easy way of specifying what the ballpark fuzzy relationships that I want fleshed out almost declaratively, and then have the library take care of doing all the traversals of resources that come back down the pipe later on. So that's kind of what goes on. I use promises a lot, just in my code in general, and definitely in this. And so the general idea is that you say, hey, I want dogs. You know, let's see if this, whatever host I'm connected to, let's see if they have something for dogs. And if they do, then let's see if I can create a new dog. And if I can create a new dog, then let's create a new dog, and let's go ahead and give that dog an owner. And so you kind of flesh out these relationships or operations that you want to do against the API in very broad terms. And then the Acolyte library is responsible for talking with the actual API, hopefully getting some response compliant stuff back so that it can traverse these relationships and do all that stuff for you. And give you back something pretty at the end. So you're probably wondering why I have this kooky ANSI art thing going on here. I wrote a little example for demonstrating these two libraries, and it uses, I thought to keep with the NodeConf theme, I would do some stuff with helicopters and little landing things and automation, and I think that would be cool. So I'm gonna try and pull that up. Hopefully nothing breaks. Probably will. I was working on it about 30 minutes ago. So let's see, where am I? Somebody from work wants me. Oh yeah. Okay, so I have this little server here. And what it does is it's going to start a bunch of different HTTP processes. And all of those HTTP processes are running their own little Sorcerer instance. I mentioned that there's that Sorcerer API little library that I wrote. And they have information on these landing platforms that I am putting out in this digital, I can't say DigitalOcean anymore, in this this pixelated ocean that I made, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. And basically, they each have, they're listening on a certain port. They each have X and Y coordinates. And I'm going to try and be able to fly a little helicopter and ask one of them for permission to land on them without knowing anything about what their API shape or the topology of their APIs looks like in advance. So I'm going to start the server to do that. And you see it spawned 10, I think. Yeah. Off by 1 errors would be the other hard thing in programming, so I hope I didn't mess that up. 10 separate instances, and they're listening just on these ascending ports. So now I should hopefully be able to open that up. That's in this folder. This is on my GitHub as well. And it's just in patchet/black-magic-apis if you want to like have all the talk codes, not slides really. So let's see, I have this manual demo. Let's see if this works. Cool, so I have a little nodecopter here, presumably. Has a JS logo on it, that's cool. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to fly this thing this way. Conceivably all the landing platforms are that way. I'm going to try and fly it that way, and then if I see a landing platform, I'm going to try and interact with it and get it to let me land on it. So let's see. You can't really see it very well, but you can see my X and Y coordinates up here. It doesn't really look like I'm moving, but you have to just take my word for it that we are flying. Oh, look, there's one. Okay, so here's the landing platform. That's kind of cool, right? For anybody that's a big video game geek, and I am, if anybody is a big Atari geek, I am. This is actually a sprite sheet that I ripped rather unofficially from a game called Sky Striker for Atari ST. It's a flight simulator. And they have these little things. It's actually one of the most fun games ever. So if anybody has an Atari ST, definitely should go on eBay and try and get a copy of Sky Striker. Anyway. So I see this little landing platform here. That's cool. I see it's kind of hard to see, but it has what port, like what localhost and what port it's listening in. So it's listening on 3006. That's cool. So if I click on it, it's actually going to open up the API for that. Oh, that's another feature of, obviously this is not JSON. Another feature of REST that a lot of people tend to neglect is content type negotiation. So really you should be able to serve back content in whatever format the client wants. And then there's, obviously you're not gonna always be able to do that. Like I didn't take the time to write something to convert this to XML. But I did write something to convert JSON to HTML, which is what enables me to look at this. So that's pretty cool. And if that's like another takeaway of things that you should probably do in your REST APIs, this is another thing. Also, side note, versioning. Don't put that in the URI. Put it in the accepts, like in the content type that you specify. It's much easier. Okay, so anyway, we see the representation of the API for this specific landing platform. That's that guy. So we're going to try and see what's going on with this guy. Again, I don't have any preconceptions about what APIs this thing exposes. But we can see that, I'll make it a little bigger. Looks like there's a way to get the position of this thing. Negative 3,822, for what it's worth. That's pretty cool. Oh, look, there's something called landing requests. That sounds topical. Requests to land on this particular boat. I think I could use that. And it shows me what methods I can do, so I can post to it and actually create a landing request conceivably. So I guess that's what I would do if I wanted to land. And it even shows me what parameters it expects in order for me to submit to that. So that's pretty cool. So I think based on this, I know how to interact with this thing. I know how to get it to let me land on it. But you know what? This is not really a very interesting aircraft carrier. Let's keep going and see if we can find a cooler one. I hope I don't. They're randomly, like, where they spawn they're randomly assigned, so sometimes it's like, okay, we didn't have to wait too long. Oh, well, look, it's a cavalcade here. Having a boat party. Okay, let's see what's going on with this guy. Oh, look, this one's got a menu. That's awesome. I've been flying in this helicopter for a long time. I'm kind of hungry. Yeah, let's look at the menu. Okay, so we've got some lovely JavaScript-related foods here. Got Remy's salty shims. That's cool. Got Cowboys immediately invoked fries. I made all these names last night at like 3 in the morning, so I apologize. Original Egma burger. ASTBLT. Happy Patty Melt. And the V8 shake. Is that everything? Oh, well, yeah. I think I'm gonna get this. I mean, it's fast food, but you know, I am in a helicopter. So let's see if how would I create an order here? Okay, so there's orders, and I can post to it. What does it expect? It expects an array of IDs for the items I want to order. Okay, let's figure out what I want. I want number 1. Well, I don't know. I'm going to go with 2. I want the BLT number 4. And I'll get the V8 shake just because I feel bad for those guys. 2, 4, and 6. That's pretty easy to remember. Cool. So I think I should be able to post to orders, right? Let's see. My curl foo is so bad. Faking. Oops. And 2, 4, 6. I hope this is right. And it was, what is it? 3004, localhost 3004/orders. Is that right? Maybe not. I stopped my server, did I? I don't think so. I think it would have given me an error message back. Maybe I did. Nope. Anyway, let's pretend that worked. Okay, so let's try and do something. I mean, yeah, we didn't get food. Let's try and actually land this sucker. So landing requests looks like it takes a post body, and it expects weight and length and time. I don't really know any of those things, but I guess I'll just make them up. How long in hours your craft will be landed here? It's funny when you can't even really remember the own API. Like maybe that's an argument for is the fact that I can't remember my own API. Okay. JSON. So what? Content type JSON. I don't know. It should just already like automatically assume that because I wasn't very smart about it, even though I railed at you guys about content types. I have to what? No, I don't think so. I think it infers it by data, like if you prefix it with data. But you might be right. -v. I'll try it. Okay. So anyway, we're going to do landing requests, right? And oops, no, that's not where I typed that. We need weight. 2, whatever, length, 2, I don't know, time. We're going to be here not very long, 1 day. Okay, and cool. And now we don't want to post at orders anymore. We want to post at landing requests. Oops. That is, looks like an express error. Okay, thanks, man. What the fuck is that? I've never seen that error before. It's good timing. All right, 1 second. Where did I bury that node server? Let's see. Are they still even running? Yeah, they're all still running. That's weird. Maybe it's in this thing. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you. That's exactly what happened. Okay, anyway. In the interest of time, let's assume that my landing request worked. And then we can just kind of like, whoop. And yeah. So, okay, so that's doing it manually, kind of interacting with the API manually, posts notwithstanding. So what I'm going to do next is, I'll go ahead and close that. I'm going to open a version of the same thing, except now I'm going to have a bot drive it. And hopefully the bot has a better time actually interacting with my own API than I did. That's what we write bots for anyway. Okay, let's try and make sure that I killed those. Cool. And so I'm going to start the server back up. Nope. Okay, so they're all back up. And I'm going to open this alternate version called automatic. And there's an index.html. Sweet. Okay, so it's kind of working a little too fast. I don't know if I'm going to be able to narrate it. It's trying to find information about that thing there. And it says it didn't like it, so it's fetching something else. And it's, yeah, there it goes. What's it doing? It's starting landing. Oh, look. Wow. So you're going to have to take my word for it. But it would not have done that if that post request that I was unable to make, probably because my curl foo is terrible. It would not have been able to land there if the landing platform hadn't said it was OK. So yeah, so if you want to check it out, there's a very simple declarative way of writing logic for these bots. So in broad strokes, and this is kind of where it gets into using Blackmagic APIs. So we all know, hopefully we all know that there are a bunch of ES6 features that are coming out, and Dominic's working really hard on that, and that's cool. One of the ES6 features that I think should be killed on site is proxies. I think that they're terrible, terrible things. I've had many a drunken argument with people where I tell them that I'll never like them if they use that. So I used it for this. And and so what it does is, so I'm a sucker for declarative, simple, silly programming of the simplest kind. So I like to be able to do things like foo bar baz. And obviously, this is no way to interact with an asynchronous API somewhere running something. Because these are just property accesses. They all happen synchronously. There's no way to do that. Except if you're doing something where you're defining a getter that returns functions transparently for these things. So let's say that instead of foo bar baz, let's say that I had my my Acolyte library, and then I tell to listen to, or to connect to 2050, whatever. And then I can do things like, Acolyte. Let's say that we have some collection of dogs that we just assume is there. Then we want find dog with ID 2, maybe. And maybe we assume that that dog has an owner. And then we can do owner dot I don't know, university. Maybe they graduated. And then at the end of it, when we're done doing terrible, terrible things to JavaScript, we rely on the fact that all these things are kind of transparent promises. So they all have then properties, and I could attach a then or a .then at any point in this chain and get that result out for that step. And then I can, and that would conceivably give me the information about the dog number 2's owner's university. And yeah, and so like I said, it uses object.define, or I'm sorry, it uses proxies to set up like a get trap on properties for each of these objects in succession. So it says, okay, somebody requested dogs. They tried to read this property dogs. I don't have it. But instead of throwing a read error or something, I'm going to give them this promisey type thing back that is itself a proxy. And in the background, I'm going to try and make this API request for a resource that matches dogs. And first I'll fetch just the root link, and then I'll look if there's anything related to dogs. And then I'll give them that back if I can find it. And so it kind of does that, and it drills down through the list of stuff. And yeah, and so I'm kind of rushing for time, but that's what I did in broad strokes. If you're more interested in this kind of stuff than you should be, then come talk to me about it. Yeah, I think that's about all the time I have. Maybe like 1 minute left, maybe not even that. But if anybody has any questions, maybe not. Well, thank you guys.